The Sundering, according to Leonas. Over 1,000 years ago, the world was destroyed by the so-called Enlightened Ones. These beings were mortals imbued with Incarna, a fragment of the awesome power of their gods. The Enlightened Ones were charged with improving and defending creation. Unfortunately, in an act of juvenile defiance, some of them rose up and tore creation asunder, sending fragments of it in all directions throughout the astral sea and the dreaming. Thankfully, daemons, the servants of creation, were able to prevent it all from being lost. In a frantic desperation, they stitched together as many fragments as they could. We now call it the tapestry. And while it no longer resembles what the gods made for us, it is stable. The realms of elves, humans, and dwarves, among others, were suddenly interwoven together. This happened across all scales, from nations to cities. Sometimes even city blocks and large homes from different realms found themselves adjacent and interconnected. Over the years, some of the realms have settled down with a distinct identity, though others remain a horrifying contradiction that would shatter even an exarch's sanity. Some realms have lost all discernible rules and norms, and are now simply called the wilds, which tend to populate the spaces in between, which are not yet civilized. As creation is now broken, the gods can no longer directly affect it, though they can still lend us favor or bring us misfortune. Fortunately, the Incarna were not lost entirely. They took refuge within the Genos and went to sleep while they healed. This is why you are here today. Your Incarna has awakened, and it will take hard work and dedication for you to learn to master its power. Creation needs your help. Will you answer the call? Who is Leonas? He is an emissary of the Lumen and an aspirant of the Eidos. He believes creation can be restored if the Incarna learn to work together and defeat their enemies. This is one story of the origin of Invictus. There are many stories in this world, all told from a different point of view, all told from a different idea, a different perspective. There is no single story. While the game will have its own official meta plot with characters and ideas, the stories are still yours to tell as you wish. We invite you to use as much or none of that story. However, that story does influence what we think to be the rich scale of the game. So let me talk to you a little bit more about it now. All right, so let's talk now about what the classes are going to look like in this game. The first thing to know is this is a level-less system, right? So there's not a 5th level warrior or 10th level warrior. You are simply a warrior. You gain abilities as a warrior. So here we can see the warrior in the center of our screen has access to a bunch of what are called domains. So a warrior has access to the domain of might, brawl, assault, resilience, aegis, leadership, and battle. In some sense, these are like subclasses in a game like Dungeons & Dragons, or even disciplines in a game like Vampire or Charm, in a game like Exalted. They are the special abilities that your character gets. So a warrior with access to might resemble something that looks a little bit like a barbarian from another game. That you can do very strong feats of strength, two-handed weapons, things of that nature. A warrior with access to the domain of resilience is going to be able to soak up a lot of damage and recover very quickly when things happen to them. A warrior with access to Aegis is going to have special defense powers that they're able to activate and use. And what you see here is that these abilities are not tied specifically to your class, but are often shared by several classes. So for example, the Paladin, which is very similar to a warrior in the sense that it has resilience, aegis, leadership, and battle, also has access to something that the warrior doesn't, and that is the powers of Lumen. Lumen is what we call the light in this game. So we see a warrior is going to be very similar to a paladin, but not the same. We actually think of a warrior and a paladin as being linked in our game. They're what's called a champion, but they each serve different causes. And that's going to tie back into the lore, which we just gave you a taste of. Right now, we currently have, I think, 12 classes sketched out. However, we're going to try to start small with 7 or 8 in the initial playtest that should be out later this year. So we're going to have the warrior in that playtest. We're going to have the paladin. We're going to have the emissary. The emissary is going to be very similar to a priest or a cleric, but not a cleric in a D&D sort of sense, closer to a priest in a World of Warcraft kind of sense. So this is more of a cloth-wearing type character, someone without necessarily a ton of physical strength, but a lot of magical strength, and they call very heavily upon their deity's powers. A rogue is going to be very similar to what you might expect from other games. They're going to have the ability to do assault, special kinds of attacks that cause extra damage. They're going to have the ability to access the power of quickness, to be able to do things faster, to be able to cut initiative, things like that. They're going to be able to manipulate luck. This is what we call fortune. They're going to be able to mess with people's brains, which we call dominate. And they're going to be able to take command of the powers of shadow itself, which we call obtenebration. The bard, which is going to come out later, you can sort of see some of the abilities that they have access to. So we see like a bard has a lot of overlap with a rogue type character in the sense that they each have quickness, they each have brawl, but then beyond that, their abilities are different. So one of the things we do in this game is we have 2 resource pools. One of them is called tenacity, and one of them is called daring. Now, daring and tenacity are resource pools that every class shares, but how you use them will differ. So daring tends to be stunts, things that you try to do that are very risky. Tenacity tends to be, I want to prevent something from happening. So if you're thinking about a saving throw, or someone tries to topple you over and you don't want to fall over, you would use tenacity to do that. But if you want to jump off a cliff and do something crazy, or jump in front of a blow that someone else is doing, that's probably going to be daring. All right, what else do we have? We have a class called an Exarch. And the Exarch, probably the closest analogs that I've been able to come up with, are like a monk from D&D, maybe Zenith from Exalted, but probably closer in some sense to what the Jedis were in the original Star Wars trilogy, without all like the baby kidnapping stuff, but you know, maybe that will be there too. So these are going to be characters that tend to focus on turning themselves into the ultimate paragon of weaponness, right? They can fight with a weapon, they can fight without a weapon, they're always prepared. And they actually draw upon powers within their soul to fuel their mechanics. They have access to resilience, so right, they can take damage easily, they can recover from it quickly, they've got access to brawl mechanics, they've got access to Auspex, which is probably a stand-in title to be able to sense or see the world around you. This is enhanced senses, things of that nature. The Ranger, which I'm really hoping will kind of break the curse that I've seen in many games, and that is it's just kind of meh. I've got a lot of exciting ideas for the Ranger, and I think it will work really quite well. We've got Shaman in here as well. These domains, like I said, they're more like maybe charms from Exalted or disciplines from Vampire, or even if subclasses were kind of a la carte in D&D. And we'll get into more of that in future videos. But I want to give you a sense of what that looks like. Another thing we're planning to do in this game is multi-classing, but in a different kind of way. That is, you can multi-class towards things that you share common abilities in. And that system is right now very experimental, but what I don't want is like a ranger to say, a warrior to say, let me become a shaman. That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I'd like you to kind of move through other classes that you have similar abilities with. We also have a number of domains which are not tied to any of those classes, that is projectiles. So powers that affect, say, archery or thrown weapons, or something of that nature, anyone can learn those domains. Alchemy, anyone can learn that. Crafting, anyone can learn that. They're not necessarily going to be the most useful right now, but over time, they can allow you to do a lot of things that you may not have been able to do otherwise. You know, if you've ever wanted to play a game where you make your own healing potions, you don't have to worry about healing in the middle of combat, that would be what alchemy was able to do. It's going to help you out of that way. So if you don't level up, how does your character get better? Well, that happens through play. You get experience at the end of each game session. And right now our vision is somewhere between 3 and 5 points, depending on how much you've been able to accomplish, what your characters learned, did you fail at some big task, did you have a learning moment? So your character is going to get a little bit of experience every session that you get to then spend on things you've actually done with your character. And this allows for a much more continuous improvement of your character, as opposed to like every 5 sessions we level up and you kind of feel stagnant throughout that. You could conceivably be improving an ability every game session depending on what you're doing with your character and what you're trying to improve. But what we don't have is like this one monumental moment where it's like, ding, I'm a new level, I've got all these new powers and abilities somehow. Instead, you get these things and there's a plausible reason that you should be able to gain them. What I don't envision right now is I'm just going to spend a bunch of experience and learn some brand new ability that I've never seen or used before. Or suddenly spells appear within my spell book. This is a game that is all about the story. So if you want to learn some new ability that you don't know, you need to find someone to teach that to you. If you want new spells, you need to go out and find them. That's part of the story. Now, again, that's how I envision it. If you don't like that in your games, you can probably get away with not doing it. But that's the goal. You get experience for the things that you're doing. You invest that experience in those abilities, and they improve as you play. So, for example, if you're a warrior and you've learned the might domain, and you get a stack of experience at the end of a game session, you say, you know what, I want to learn the next level of that might ability. And that's probably going to be okay, unless, you know, your game master's got some reason that this shouldn't work. This should be a conversation. But generally speaking, warriors, you know, have the incarna from a warrior. And so they have some preternatural instincts and some abilities to learn those abilities and powers. But a warrior, you know, who's got a bunch of points in might can't just say like, you know what, I want to learn dominate. You'd have to go find a rogue or someone else who has access to dominate to teach you how to do that. Could that be other party members? Absolutely. So you could potentially teach each other's abilities and things of that nature. I have no problem with that. I think it's a great idea. It helps the party composition and things of that nature. So you're not leveling. So you're never gaining like a batch of new hit points. That leaves your character fundamentally vulnerable. As you're learning new things, however, you're going to be learning new defensive powers. You're going to be learning new defensive abilities. So in Dungeons & Dragons, there's a shield spell. You cast it, and suddenly you've got shield until your next round. To me, that's kind of dull. Instead, in this game, the Weaver, which is our mage, is going to learn how to cast the shield spell and strengthen it with different essences. So if you have a shield spell and you strengthen it with fire, that's going to burn people that get too close to you. It's not going to be as strong as if you make a shield out of frost essence, but it's going to have different elemental properties based on what you're trying to do. So a mage isn't going to have a ton of hit points, but a mage can prepare by casting a powerful magical shield on themselves, and then as they take damage, that shield gets worn down. But once that shield's down, you're vulnerable. So the way I try to think about it is, this game is built to reward the things that you do that fit the lore, that fit the fiction, that fit the movies, and the way that we think it should play out. That's our goal anyways. We're going to see how it works out. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. It means a lot to me. This is a world that I've had a lot of fun building, a game that I've just loved making. Sometimes I don't feel that I've got a lot of choice in the matter. It just kind of comes out. If you have enjoyed this video, please do like it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I'm going to ask that you do that now. If you don't mind, I'm also going to ask you to leave a comment below. The more you engage with a video on YouTube, the more YouTube thinks other people are going to want to see it. So I ask that you do that. Thank you so much. Roll hard. This has been Dave.